And we'll turn it over to you, Todd. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, appreciate it. Been an outstanding 8 weeks of winter workouts. I think that's where it begins. Coach Steiner and his staff have done a really good job. Kids look strong. First day of practice, kind of, typical non-padded spring ball first day, excitement, guys running around, but we'll get a true sense of what we have on Saturday when we put the pads on for the first time and start to see a little bit of separation of, who can play the game with physicality and who can play in their pads. So looking forward to it, just to have the opportunity to get back on the field, and it was cut short last year after the first day, but to actually be able to run, knock on wood, for, 14 more practices to get a chance to see where we're at, heading into the summertime is exciting for us. We're just glad to be out there and having the opportunity.
Okay, we'll open it up to questions to the media for both Coach Orlando and Kana'i. Don't feel free to ask either of them a question. We'll start with Ryan Karchi.
Hey, Todd, just wondering, it seems like you have a lot of newcomers this spring. What in general have you seen from them just kind of heading into spring practice, and what are your expectations?
Well, acceptance is probably not more from our standpoint as coaches, but you kind of watch how they interact with our current players and especially our vets, just to see if they're doing the things that, the little things, the effort, the hustle, and if they get corrected, whether they take the coaching. So all those things that it's really to get that acceptance into the group. So, and they've done a great job. There hasn't been anyone where we felt like, he's defiant, he wants to do things his own way, and a very humble group that came in, and very hungry group that's come in. So that's probably the most impressive part that I've seen out of the young guys. The expectations to learn how to practice. A lot of these guys are coming, out of high school where, a play probably ends, a couple seconds as it begins, and, teaching them to run to the echo of the whistle, teaching them, to take every individual rep as if it's a game like reps. All those things take time. So that's what we're working on right now. We've had to correct a couple things in the first day of practice so guys understand the level that you're competing at and how you're going to miss plays or get hurt, one of the two, if you do it if you don't do it the right way. And that takes a little bit of time, but they're all willing. I think they're great kids. They're willing to learn, and they've been accepted really, really early, which is a great sign.
Obviously, you've only had one spring practice, but any of those guys who kind of caught your eye at least? Yeah,
not really, because it's so early. I think they all did a good job. Our coaching staff had, we had some opportunities to meet with them and had some opportunities to walk and talk through stuff. And that's what you're trying to see, is somebody that can process. And then when they go out in the field, just making sure the stage isn't too big for them, because a lot of guys, don't know what they're doing and they'll freeze up. I didn't see any of that. I saw guys that were constantly learning, and they put the time and effort into. They're prideful kids, which is a great sign.
Okay, we'll go over to Antonio.
Todd, what was the process like for you guys getting Josh Jackson to play corner and moving him to that side of the ball?
Yeah, it was a discussion, last season, where it was like, we thought we were a little bit thin and we were looking for athletes, and especially guys with ball skills. And he's done a great job. It was funny because you kind of put people out there and you kind of hold your breath, but he bought in. That was the one thing when we brought him in, because that's always the player's choice. As a coach, that's the one thing you don't want to do, is force upon somebody. And then when you sit down and look at them eye to eye, you get a sense whether they're committed to it or they're just doing it just because they want to be a good team guy. And he was committed to it. And then when he went out and we started doing one-on-ones, or more importantly, when Tay started taking him through individual drills, he just had natural movements for the position. And then we saw him, obviously when you get a guy that's skillful with the football, that's a huge advantage. So when the ball goes up, he can reverse himself and go after the football just as good as a receiver. So, we're excited. I can tell you this, I'm really, really excited about him. And when Dante gets a chance to really show him the finer parts of the position, I think he's going to be damn good.
Eric McKinney.
Todd, obviously you had the fall season, but is there anything this spring that you need to kind of catch up or take advantage of that you weren't able to do last spring?
Well, I think it's all the culture stuff. That was the most difficult part about last year was we came in and we talked pretty big about the physicality and how hard it is to practice day in and day out with just relentless pursuit. So you're ready for it, and then to go out in the field and say, okay, this is day one. Here we go. Let's make sure that this, because you only got one shot at it. When you come in as a new guy, if it's not set in stone, it's hard to fix, or you can't come back. You can't do things soft and then come back a year later and say, hey, we're going to start hardening up. I mean, when you first get here, it's got to be hard. So to go in the first practice and like, okay, that was pretty decent, then get it cut short. And you're like, okay, we just missed spring. The spring's all culture. I mean, plays are good, but you're training people how to do things. And once that's taken away from you, you get into fall camp and, you go halfway through the winter time and it's like, are we going to train culture when we have a game in 4 weeks? And it's like, so we take the first 2 weeks of it and it almost hurt us because you're going through some things and you're teaching them how to be tough, but in the back of your head, you're saying like, we got a game in like 2 weeks. Like we got to make sure that we have a ball club to put out there for the game and we don't tax these guys so much. So that's having a full 15 practices just to teach that is going to make it a lot easier for us in fall camp, where fall camp might be only 1 week of just hardening and sharpening that sword and then taking 3 weeks and getting ready for an opponent or just modifying things that way. So that was probably the advantage right now of being able to do this for the next, month is going to be huge for us because we'll see the dividends on the back end when we get into fall camp.
And then are there any specific positions, I guess, you're looking at maybe a little more interested to kind of find an answer this spring?
No, because it's too early. I mean, the one thing that we're judging guys off right now is the last 8 weeks. The winter workouts have to mean something. So a lot of these guys are going to get opportunities because they've had, great winter workouts. But until you put the pads on, you really have to reserve judgment. It's in this day and age when you can just run around and tag people off, or this day and age, you're not threatened by somebody hitting you as hard as they can. It's easy to play. But as we move forward on this, as we get into Saturday, which we'll put the first, put the pads on, it'll be go get it. That's when these guys will start to separate themselves because we're going to play the toughest dudes that we got.
Mark Culkin.
Good morning, gentlemen. Coach, I have a question for you, but first I want to ask Kana'i. Last year, you kind of had a breakout season. Do you have any personal goals as far as, this upcoming season, seeing as you're one of the veteran leaders now?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like it's more of to adapt the culture, like to sharpen the sword so that like us as a defense, we'll be able to like take the field better than we did last year. Like Coach Orlando was talking about, sharpening the sword so we can go out there swinging. It's definitely going to be a challenge for us to adapt that culture, but we have a lot more time now, so I'm sure we can get that situated.
Do you see one of the biggest gains from last year to this year under Coach? Maybe it's discipline. How has that helped you in your game?
Oh, definitely. It's been quite a long 8 weeks. We've been practicing hard, working hard, and I believe that with this 5 weeks of spring ball, it'll I guess strengthen our discipline in the football game. Yeah.
And then, Coach, you're obviously in charge of the linebackers. You got a bunch of guys still, rehabbing, Solo, Jordan Iosefa, and then you got, Taylor Katoa coming in. When those guys are available, because you didn't recruit them, what are their roles going to be in your scheme?
Oh, they're going to be put in situations where they can help us. You know, Jordan, I expect Jordan to come back. It's just I'm trying to be mindful of, I mean, this is very frustrating for those guys. You know, they've having the game taken away from them for a long time. And, you know this like anything else, any profession is, you know, you could be in meetings, you could be with the guys, but if you're physically not doing everything that they're doing, you kind of feel left on the outside. So I'm trying to be mindful of making sure they're still part of the group as if we were on the field together working out. But, you know, once they're healthy, they get, it's just an equal shot. Everybody in this program that's here, that's working their tails off, doing things the right way. Everybody, I mean, there's no job that's set in stone. It doesn't matter whether it's Kana'i here or anybody else. You got to produce. So once those guys get back, we'll see where they're at. We'll be smart with them. I think it's going to be important that way. And we're going to give them reps. And if they're good enough, they'll be out in the field.
In your career, have you ever dealt with a situation where you've had a player or players of that caliber who have been out for so long? And for instance, like Solo, he hasn't played in a competitive game since 2017.
It's been a while since that. I just keep guys motivated. I think that's probably the biggest thing. And it's difficult. It's very difficult. It's more about things that are outside of football than anything else. The care factor, just to make sure that, you know, people don't feel like, hey, just because I'm not on the football field that I don't feel like I'm a part of this. And but I will say specifically with those two guys, with Jordan and Solo, they're such prideful kids that they're working their tails off 24/7. They love football. They love it. You know, it's and once it's taken away from you, it can be very frustrating. So I always look at it just to make sure that mentally they're right. It's not the actual football itself, is just to make sure they don't get down in the dumps and feel like they're not a part of it. So try to go out of our way more than anything else to make sure that they still feel they're a part of the group.
Thank you, Coach.
Back to Ryan Karchi.
Todd, obviously Talanoa was such a big part of this defense last year and such a unique skill set. Without him, you know, in that versatility, how does that just change in general, how you have to adjust the scheme, maybe even defensively, or just what you expect out of that safety position?
Well, it just goes back to just watching it. And the scheme itself is the scheme. There's a lot of calls in it, but as you start to put it out there in practice, you kind of watch guys and what they can do and what they can't do. Fortunately for us last year, that Tally could do a lot of things. And there was some things that he did exceptional, you know, maybe as a blitzer, you know, so you just watch, that's all. And then at the very end of spring ball, once we get through the whole package itself, you start to say, like, this is really good for this guy. This is not good. This is not what he does well. And you try to fit your scheme towards your personnel. And that's what we'll end up doing. So we'll just let it rip in the spring to see what guys can do. You can get a little bit of barometer in terms of getting out of winter workouts, you know, a guy's skill set, but every year is a little bit different. I think a lot of guys make a lot of gains during this time. So before we start, you know, judging people what they can and can't do, we're just going to let this thing play itself out. I think I'll have a really good beat if I get back together with you guys. You know, I think it'll be the second scrimmage, which I think is about 3 weeks. And I'll be able to come back and say, hey, you know, these guys can do this. I think these guys are going to be really dynamic, but that takes a little bit of time. Like I said, we're making a little bit of a judgment off of day one and helmets and shorts, which you can't do that as a coach.
So do you feel like whoever steps into that role that Talanoa and that it would help for them to have sort of that ability to rush the passer, to play in the box, or is that not
what the position is? You know, in the last 7 years in this position, and I've been fortunate enough because I've been with Craig for the last, you know, this will be 6 years, and he's done an outstanding job. You know, when we're at Houston together, then the guy was a big time player. When we were at Texas, it was an All-American there. Tally, an All-American here. So he's done an outstanding job of developing that position, and we'll find somebody and we'll keep working with them.
Antonio.
Todd, I know Craig had the relationship with him in recruiting, but what do you remember from Xavier Alford during that recruiting process? And What have you seen from him over the past 8 weeks?
Yeah, just an unbelievable person to start off with, and then as a worker, a yes sir, no sir guy. That the internal makeup of the kid is outstanding, you know. And then as an athlete, he's explosive, he's strong, he's weight room developed, which always gives you the ability to be able to put him into situations, and physically he's ready to go. And then he's moving around really, really well. You know, he's got a handful of reps the other day in practice, did a really nice job, but I'm excited to watch him because I think he's a run and hit guy. That's, you know, that's the biggest thing that I can remember in our recruitment of him. And he's been accepted really, really quick, which is a really good sign. He does things the right way. So really, really excited to watch him when the pads go on. I think that's where he's going to shine more than anything else.
Keely.
Hey, Todd, you mentioned the winter workouts. I was wondering if there's anyone or any player that took a leap of growth over that course of 8 weeks, and anyone surprised you body changing or anything like that?
Sakona did, in my opinion. I think he was a guy that Mar's done a really good job of developing. There's other guys, but that was the kid that I thought was like, man, he walked in there and changed his body. He's doing some things athletically that are better. You know, I'm excited about him. The other guys, I mean, Coach Steiner, his staff have done an unbelievable job of hip strength and core and all the things that go along with that. But he was the guy that stood out to me.
And then since we haven't experienced the strength and conditioning staff, can you explain to us what it was like and how it was different from the previous staff?
I'm pretty sure we all felt the same thing. We felt that it was tough in the beginning, but we found a way to strive through it. We buckled down. It was very different. It was more upbeat, more, I guess you could say, higher tempoed than the last strength coaches.
Haley Sawyer.
Hello. Coach said earlier this week that creating turnovers is going to be a focus this season. So can you just elaborate on that goal a little bit? And I know it's early, but maybe identify some players who have that mindset of just getting to the ball.
Is this for me?
Yeah, but if Kana'i wants to add anything,
Okay.
you're welcome.
Kana'i, go ahead. Talk about turnovers.
Sorry, can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, no problem. Coach said earlier this week that you guys are focused on creating turnovers this season. So can you just elaborate on that goal a little bit, and who are some guys who maybe have that mindset of just getting to the ball?
So basically we're more focused more on like I guess getting to the balls, and like even when the ball's in the air, like don't worry about the ball, just get to it. We're basically working on stripping the ball, because that's where most turnovers occur. So like during our practice time, we're focusing on
Freeze up.
what was that? Sorry, did it freeze or something?
Yeah, you froze there.
He froze a little bit.
Okay. Oh, well, I just basically it's just we're taking time out of practice to just focus more on getting to the ball at all times, no matter where you're near or far. 5 yards, 5 yard burst to the ball. It'll work on 11 man to the ball.
Todd, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, we, you know, when you look at last year, which is last year's team. I don't like to judge it, to what's going on this year. But when you do some of the stuff that we do, some of them are, kind of unforced turnovers. Guys will drop balls, but it's part of the scheme itself. If you make guys play a little bit faster than what they want to do, and there's some INTs which are good, and then being physical can get the ball out. So all those things that kind of mandated this spring to make sure that everybody, we probably have about anywhere from 5 to 6 individual periods where each unit will go and do their own little drills, but we mandated it to make sure that at least one of them was put into some type of turnover, whether it's a strip, whether it's, strip sack, whether it's interceptions. I think really at the end of the day, whatever you emphasize is what you get. So if you keep talking about it and you keep drilling it, eventually it will happen. And then sometimes it just pours, and they just keep coming, which is a good thing. So, like I said, it's when you're talking about things that you got to get better at and things that you were decent at, and the turnovers were good last year, but that's a different ball club. So, but we can train it, and we are training it every day in practice.
Okay, back to Mark Culkin.
Who are some of the younger guys who have caught your attention that everybody should look out for?
Oh man, this is the part I don't like to do, to be honest with you. I'm gonna tell you.
That's why I asked.
I'm gonna tell you this. How about this? This will be it. I'll give you some sense of this on Saturday. I'm gonna tell you the guys. Every one of those kids that has come into this program has worked their tails off. There's no doubt about it. But to sit here and make judgment off of somebody off of day one of non-padded practice is not good for that locker room right now, to be honest with you. We're reserve judgment off it. You come back on me on Saturday, I'll give it to you, because a lot of these guys, it's one thing to do it, with no pads on. It's another thing to have a 20-year-old, 21-year-old grown man running at you. A lot different to see how you play. So let's just hold a little bit of judgment on that. But I will say this: there's not been one disappointment in the group. All the young guys have come in here and they've done exactly what we've asked them to do academically, being accountable, through workouts, through the first day of practice. There's not one guy that we feel like, oh man, I don't know about this guy. They've all done an outstanding job. They'll get a chance to play on Saturday, and then we'll be able to comment on them much better.
Same question for Kana'i, because he hangs out with his peer group. Who are some of these younger guys who have caught your attention that we should be looking out for? I know Coach doesn't feel comfortable answering that question now, but maybe you can.
It's going down the back alley right there. You go.
Well, I mean, it's basically the same thing. I have the same answer. Like it's really hard to judge somebody on like whether how they're doing in the weight room or like during practice when we only have shorts. I mean, like Coach Teo said, like it's gonna come down to whether or not his physicality matches his strength in the weight room or his speed on the field. But I mean, yeah, we can't really judge anything right now.
They've all been really, really good. There's not really a separation when you're taking a look at the winter workouts and all that stuff. They've all been real good. And now we're starting, as we go into practice, we'll see that separation. And that's when we'll talk about them.
Okay, we have time for one last question. Ryan Karchi.
Todd, you mentioned just the extra time to be able to kind of establish the culture that you wanted to last year. Obviously, culture can be kind of a vague term. Like, what do you mean when you say like you can kind of slow down and establish culture? Like, what does that involve in terms of this session in particular?
Well, for us, it's tough discipline, united. I mean, that's what it is. But more importantly than anything else is there's only one person who holds up a trophy at the end of the year, and human nature most of the time, especially with younger people, says that I can do B work and please leave me alone, I'm doing B work, when they really can do A+ work, which is really hard. And a lot of people shy away from that. So what we're trying to preach is that every day you come in there, I mean, it's 4th and inches, and, you know, game on the line. If you train that way and maybe you fall short of doing A+ work and it's an A, well, that's way better than a B. And then if you get enough people doing that, then you can hold up that trophy at the end of the year. And that's all trainable stuff. I think that's, people get so consumed in the athletic part of it, the actual plays themselves, when the majority of time where you fail on a play is because internally you're not on point. And that stuff, you know, every day, whether it is being disciplined enough to wake up in the morning and grab your breakfast, to go to all your classes, to have your camera on and a Zoom, you know, it's all trainable stuff. So that's the biggest thing is, you know, from our standpoint is human nature says to do things a little bit easier, but you always got more. And as we go onto the field and we start to try to establish that, to me is the culture of being able to go really, really hard, 4 to 6, you know, A to B. And that's what we talked about. And there's only one way. It can't be words. You have to train that. And that's what we're trying to do every day. And if you do that at a high level, human nature is not any different in football than it is outside of football. It's all one and the same. So if you're laxed outside the game, at some point you'll be lax, even though you care about ball maybe a little bit more than maybe something else in your life. Your wiring is all the same. So that takes time. And that's what spring football was all about, to have 15 days of just going at it and doing things that are kind of defy human nature. And if you can do that, when you line up versus your opponent, you're hoping your opponent has done things B+ or B work, and you can beat them on that individual play. And that's the part of coaching that's really, really tough. And the acceptance of the players, like the Kana'i's and those things. And that's, you know, once you get older, you know, you get a little taste of a championship and you get close to it. And then you understand that a handful of plays here and there, and how do we get those plays? And that's how you get those plays. And that's the tough part about it. And that's where we're going to train like crazy. And I expect these upperclassmen, the guys that have been around here, especially guys with their clocks running a little bit low, to really emphasize, especially with our young guys.
So in terms of last year,
Ryan, I've got to cut him off here. I'm sorry,
Okay.
because he has a meeting to get off to. Todd, thank you for joining us. Kana'i, thank you also for joining us. To the media, a reminder that we'll have Coach Helton on Saturday morning at 8 a.m. and Saturday's practice at 11:25 will be open to the media for viewing. So with that, we'll let everybody go. Thank you.